AI slop has hit the science creators. I cannot go on social media without AI science slop being poured into my eyes. This isn't just beauty science, this is all of science and facts. And it's made me really worried about critical thinking and just, what are we doing as a species? By AI slop, I'm talking about stuff that is obviously mostly AI, things like ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini. And a lot of people don't seem to know why it's a problem or how to spot it, including science creators. So today we're going through why you can't trust AI science slop and how to spot it. We're going slop spotting. And once you start seeing the slop, it is really hard to unsee. I think the AI slop infographics are the most obvious. There's also the writing. It's not X, it's Y. No A, no B, just C. This is in posts and captions, people are saying it in videos. It sounds kinda smart, but it isn't if you take a second to look at it properly. And there's mistakes that no human adult would make. Like this post has a list of references and only one of them actually exists. And getting really basic facts wrong, like these cosmetic chemists managed to talk about a study for 15 minutes over 2 podcasts while missing basic stuff that's even mentioned in the abstract. Scientists are messing things up like how long a study took, how many people were in the study. And a lot of people were telling on themselves with these caricatures, asking ChatGPT to include what they knew about their job. I saw so many from medical doctors, and there's topics that they post about in the background, like skincare tips. Now, a lot of this slop is from people who never cared about accuracy in the first place. They just want to make low-effort content and look like an expert, push their brand, get sponsorships. And honestly, there was a lot of human slop before AI slop. Stealing content has always been a huge problem. It's not like the plagiarism machine is going to magically make people more ethical. But it is less effort to make slop now, so Brandolini's law is much worse. This is the BS asymmetry principle. The amount of energy to refute BS is a heck of a lot bigger than the energy you need to make it. So those of us who want to get real science from experts and science creators, we need to learn how to spot AI slop, and I'll be going through some tips. But what really disturbs me is seeing people who used to put in effort now just posting AI slop. This guy is one of Australia's top epidemiologists. I followed him in 2020. His feed is now mostly slop, and he has given ChatGPT a name. Sorry, ChatGPT has told him its name. Columbia Public Health, this is an Ivy League college, they are also posting slop. Why are they doing this? I think some science creators are scared they'll fall behind. Social media platforms punish you if you don't post enough, and there's also all that AI is here to stay marketing. Some of them might not see the problem, they genuinely think AI content is accurate and better than their own content. I have seen so many science creators say things that show they do not understand AI tools. Like this chemist from the podcast, he's been using ChatGPT heavily for 2 years, his hobby is making AI music. But he still doesn't seem to realize that you can't rely on ChatGPT to summarize things correctly or fact-check podcasts, because AI chatbots aren't accurate. AI chatbots like ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini do not give reliable factual information. They don't build a concept of reality and refer to it like humans do because of how they fundamentally work. AI companies don't try to explain this to users, possibly because some studies found that people who understood AI less were more willing to use it. So companies probably benefit from us assuming that ChatGPT is kind of magical. Maybe that explains all those sparkly logos. A lot of people seem to believe chatbots are looking up information from a database, it's an electronic brain thinking. It's just like a smart and helpful person talking to you because that is how it sounds. So how do they actually work? Chatbots are based on large language models or LLMs. This video has a great explanation of how they work, but fundamentally, they put words and phrases that are usually near each other, without understanding what those words mean, the concepts behind the words. To make an LLM, they take a massive amount of text as training data, a crap ton, that is a metric crap ton, of books, websites, and papers. The words in the text are converted to numerical codes. Then it creates a complex map of which codes are statistically near each other in the training data. This is used to essentially create a massive set of loaded or uneven dice for outputting text. The weights and which dice they pick depends on the prompts you put in, also the previous words in the output. So it is very fancy text prediction that gives very human-sounding answers. It knows the word and goes between two things because in the training data, that is where the word and is found. If you ask it something with the word apple near things about tech, it will use the apple dice with the tech words and not the apple dice with the fruit words. I'm sure there's also songs about stationery dice as well. Like and subscribe for way too many food analogies. These models need a whole bunch of training data to make answers that sound kinda sensible. That's why there are all these copyright lawsuits. They feed the models as much real text as they can. Then there's extra stuff layered on top to get the model to give better responses for whatever purpose. Basically, good responses are given more marks, and the model works out how to write a response that will score higher. This extra stuff is why ChatGPT used to keep telling you how great your questions are. I don't think it was meant to be like a delusional billionaire simulator, but it does work for that. Some other chatbots are meant to give responses that sound helpful, harmless, and honest. The overall effect, it is mashing together text from its training data that it thinks is relevant. Different models will make slightly different dice, and they have different rules for choosing the dice. But fundamentally, these steps are the basis of every LLM, and it's why they have accuracy issues. LLMs rely on correlation. Language obviously correlates with concepts, but they aren't the same, so the problem here is basically correlation isn't causation. When humans learn words, we learn that are and aren't are opposites, but the LLM only sees them as numbers, so there is information lost in this tokenization process, the coding. It has to work out the meaning based on where these codes are positioned relative to other codes. There's enough examples in the training data to work out that 553 and 23236 are opposites. But for other words, the model might not be able to work out their exact meaning just from the word positions. And the relationships that the model draws do not always make sense. There are tons of examples. If you say someone's favorite color is yellow and ask what's their job, an LLM might be more likely to say they are a bus driver, because yellow and school buses are next to each other a lot in the training data, and it is generalizing this correlation to the wrong meaning. This is also why LLMs cannot do a lot of logic that we find easy. It can look like it's doing logic, it can mash passages of logic together. But it is pretty trash at applying some pretty basic concepts. For example, LLMs can solve unsolved maths problems, but they can't necessarily count letters and words, because you can sometimes get a decent maths proof by mashing text of other proofs together, but you can't blend answers to counting questions to reliably count another thing. LLMs also have issues with messing up quotes and references. You usually don't get a real reference by stitching bits of other references together. This mixed ability issue is called jagged intelligence, and yes, some problems that got a lot of attention have been patched. For example, a chatbot will sometimes use a calculator in the background instead. But there are hundreds, thousands of concepts like referencing and counting where mashing text together doesn't give you the right answer. And the vast majority of these will probably never be fixed. Here's a way that Jordan Harrod put it. She gave me feedback on my script. These LLM systems are always quote-unquote hallucinating, which is really just BSing. Making stuff up with no regard for truth. AI hallucinations aren't just outlier edge cases, a bit of an oopsie. Truth is just not baked into how they work, it's just that their BS aligns with truth some of the time. On top of this, tech companies aren't optimizing results to be correct, they are optimized for other things. Like ChatGPT's compliments meant you kept using it even though it might sound like a lot of conflicting things are correct. Grok was shoving Elon's politics into its answers. If the company is somewhat ethical, they're usually optimized to give responses that appear helpful, harmless, and honest, which is not the same as truth, but even if it was, the answers will still depend on the training data. Again, LLMs essentially mash together text it's picked as relevant, so they're going to repeat common myths and biases, and they can make up reasons to back up answers that they didn't use logic to get to. They can give pretty convincing illusions of thinking.
That's not my trick, Michael. It's my illusion.
If you're an alien and you don't know if burgers are good for sore throats, good luck. And they often lie about their reasoning. If you give it a puzzle on which person is buying drugs, it gives the appearance of reasoning. But it points towards the black man over the white woman even when you swap the person who is fidgeting with their pockets and the person asking about prices. That's because it's been fed practically all of the text that's been written in English, and a lot of that is biased AF. It is rationalizing away its biases. If you ask for differences between chemical and mineral sunscreens, it spews out myths that are common online. This was in a peer-reviewed journal for Australian doctors. More than half of these points are not real differences, but it is what chatbots will say. These myths cause people to give up on wearing sunscreen, which is a massive problem because 2 in 3 people get skin cancer here. This came out at the start of summer and they disclosed AI use, which is nice, but it would have been nicer if they checked the information properly. They do not have references for a whole bunch of these. And even if a company wanted to, there is no practical way to make an LLM that is always accurate. There are LLMs with deep research features. These tend to weigh higher quality sources more heavily and they generate a lot of text, but they only have access to sources that skew towards lower quality. Some chatbots are designed to rely more on documents that you upload, but LLMs cannot make weighted dice that give sensible answers without that metric crap ton of training data. So they can't only use the things you upload unless it's literally just reprinting it word for word. So they only reduce hallucinations, they don't eliminate them. Do not listen to LinkedIn influencers. That is good advice most of the time, but especially on AI, it is like a cult there. And there is a lot of incorrect peer-reviewed stuff in the first place. So even if you could restrict it to just specific papers, you still run into accuracy issues unless you already know the topic and you can fact check it. I've talked about so many incorrect papers before, and even papers in high-quality journals from respected researchers can have stuff that's wrong in the intro. It's like fluff. It's just not something that gets checked a whole bunch by authors or peer reviewers. Some studies have looked at how often papers are citing other papers and they're getting what that other paper said wrong. And it's estimated to be something like 25%, which is 1 in 4. That is really, really high. And an extra layer on this BS lasagna, peer review is getting flooded with more AI slop than it can screen out. LLMs are also getting trained more and more on AI slop. We are trying to build slop on top of slop. So the only way to tell if AI-generated content is true is if you already know the answer. For science, that means getting an expert to check it. At this point, the science creator I'm talking to will usually say, well, that means I can use AI text as a starting point. I am an expert, I will check it. And this sounds fine on the surface, the crispy top of our BS lasagna, except for how our brains work. That was a fake lasagna top. I'm really hungry, I should probably eat.
Lasagna!
Kind of like with LLMs, our brains evolved to take particular shortcuts. Quick, good enough thinking helped humans survive drop bear attacks or whatever early on in our evolution. I am not a historian. There is a ton of research on our mental shortcuts or heuristics and our cognitive biases. And a lot of the features of AI text will trigger these shortcuts, and that means it is extra hard for us to fact check. It really hooks into things that are deeply baked in our brains. First, there's authority bias. AI outputs sound really confident, and we tend to believe people who sound like they know what they're talking about. Sounds right does not mean actually right. And this effect is worse if you don't know how LLMs work and you think they are basically a smart person looking up a database. More importantly, there is a bias with processing fluency. This means when something is easy for us to read, our brains confuse that with truth. It feels more correct. LLM outputs are fluent, they have good grammar and spelling, they sound right. It is really easy to just nod along and agree with what it's saying. You have to use a lot more conscious mental effort to override this feeling and properly check the meaning it's going down too smoothly. I'm sure someone's thinking, these aren't problems for me, I'm built different. You probably aren't. We're talking about going against hundreds of thousands of years of evolution. It's much more likely you're overconfident in your own thinking abilities. And yes, there are studies coming out linking AI use to overconfidence. There's also the fact that LLMs just aren't good at communicating, which is kind of the whole point of science communication. To make complex science understandable, you need to decide how to organize and present ideas. You need to do the whole iceberg. LLMs do not have the skills to do the whole iceberg consistently. Mashing text together doesn't organize ideas in a sensible way. AI slop is a lot like food slop in that sense. For example, this is Gemini telling us 2 things to look for in a skincare serum. And even if we ignore how pointless and impossible looking for low molecular weight is, I feel like that is probably something from one brand's marketing, it has shoved 2 completely unrelated things into that second point. I see this all the time with AI summaries of things that I've said in podcasts or meetings, like just as a starting point for a summary. It'll turn my 4 main points into 3 because LLMs really like 3 things for some reason. Maybe it was fed too many Irishman jokes. Or it will split my ideas really weirdly. It will shove 2 important points into 1 small point, and then a random anecdote or food analogy turns into its own separate point. This is bad for writing content even as just a starting point. Because of the anchoring effect, it's really hard for humans to ignore how the starting point frames everything. It takes, again, a lot of conscious effort to override it. And of course, there's all that unnecessary fluff that LLMs just add to everything. This fluff does not make things clearer, it sounds superficially smart, it reads like it's swallowed a thesaurus, it repeats itself, this long-ass email could have been the email subject line. It means we just have more words and also harder words that you have to read and check in that AI slop for the same amount of actual information. This might be the main thing that pisses me off about seeing AI slop. You might think it saves you time, it probably doesn't if you're doing things properly, but it is just so disrespectful of the reader's time. So AI slop is actually one of the worst starting points for writing things. Your brain has to override all of this extra stuff, it has to work harder to make sure it's actually correct and makes sense. And then because of that jagged intelligence issue, LLMs can make really weird mistakes that we are not used to checking for, like missing something in the first line. And this is why I just really don't believe AI slop posters are checking properly. It takes so much extra effort. Plus, there are studies that show people tend to just trust AI chatbots, even when the AI is wrong and they are more correct. Just using the AI chatbot makes people feel more confident about their wrong answer. On top of being a plagiarism machine, it is also an overconfidence machine. I have struggled to find AI slop posters who aren't making daft mistakes. Writing in your own voice is usually way easier than getting the facts right. Like this doctor's infographics, this has messed up letters and glycolic paid. AI images also work on correlations and paid has a similar shape to the word acid. This graphic is like 80% BS, but in the comments, you can see that he doesn't even agree with it. Someone asked him what he recommends for whiteheads and blackheads. His slop says clay masks and glycolic acid, but he says retinoids, which is only under blackheads. A science creator tried to cancel me for saying he used AI, he flat out denied it. His videos had screenshots with ChatGPT formatting, it puts links in these bubbles. But earlier he also did a video dragging someone else who used ChatGPT for posting fake references, and then he posted fake references. He is an Ivy League graduate, he should realize that it is probably smart to check for fake references if he is going to lie about not using it. Is this AI brain rot where AI slop posters are getting worse at thinking because they are using it too much? Or is it just lazy people not caring? AI brain rot is a massive problem and I will go into that later, but for slop science creators, I don't think it really matters. The impact is the same. We are getting flooded with smart-sounding incorrect slop posted by people meant to be educating, we are meant to trust them. This means we need to learn how to spot the slop. Sometimes the person will post about how they use AI or say they think AI is accurate. Apart from that, there are still lots of other slop signs. If the slopper is super lazy, they might use screenshots from the app and you can see the formatting. For example, ChatGPT has links like this, Gemini's links look like this. There are also specific tells. AI chatbots have linguistic quirks that come out a lot in their text because they are probability-based text mashing machines. M dashes and semicolons were a big thing and they still are. Saying what something isn't before saying what it is, it's not X, it's Y. They like having 3 things in a list and they like bullet points and using emojis as the bullet points. This is a bit upsetting to me because I like using these. They are really good ways to visually organize information. So obviously real people do these too. Seeing these alone isn't a sure sign of AI slop. But if you see these way too much, especially when it doesn't make sense or it is out of character for that poster, that is a huge red flag. There's also the overall style. AI text tends to use a lot of words to say not very much. It repeats itself with slightly different words. It's very much, this paragraph could have been a sentence. Things all sound really profound and important. It's kind of like fake deep. It sounds like someone who maybe doesn't have a soul and is posting on LinkedIn because they really want to be a thought leader, like an inspirational speaker. There are lots of short, clipped sentences for dramatic effect. AI infographics tend to come in certain styles. A lot of images have a piss filter where everything is just too yellow. It tends to use particular fonts. A lot of these stylistic features will change over time. Some of the infographic generators have solved that not really real letters problem, and people are learning to hide the slop better. But there are slop signs that will take much more effort to fix. Inconsistent tone is a massive red flag. If someone used to type in all lowercase and now has weirdly perfect spelling, grammar, punctuation, they have full stops at the ends of sentences in like all their Instagram captions, check their newer posts versus their older posts. Free ChatGPT launched in late 2022, but a lot of people didn't start slopping until 2025. There's also hyperprolific output. AI slop is quick and low effort, so sloppers usually post a lot. Accurate science content generally takes a long time to make. It can take a few hours to read one science paper properly. So if someone is posting videos every day with 10 peer-reviewed references on all sorts of topics, learning a new topic takes a long time, that is a massive red flag. There's also inhuman errors, mistakes that are really unlikely for a human to make. Things like non-existent quotes and fake references. Also, missing really obvious stuff in a study. Studies can be hard to interpret if you don't have the right background, but a lot of AI slop, it is missing things that are super obvious if you can just read, if you're like a 10-year-old. Also, disagreeing with the information in the post that you just posted. There are also formatting and organization decisions that don't make sense. LLMs really like bolding and tables, so think about, does it make sense to have that? 3 things in a list where it should have been more or less, 2 ideas jammed into a single dot point, it lists X, Y, and Z, but the 3 categories do not make sense. It's not X, it's Y, but it makes no sense to talk about it like that. Choppy 2 or 3 word sentences for dramatic effect, but it is just too dramatic all the time for that context. Also, stray text from sloppily copy-pasting LLM outputs. Another massive red flag is a history of not caring about accuracy. If they've posted a lot of obvious AI slop in the past, it is possible they've learned from their mistakes, but if they are still posting lots and lots of content, they are probably still slopping but hiding it better, so check their past posts. Mudcaps is also useful here. This is a list of red flags for unreliable experts. If someone ticks off a lot of these, it might be a good idea to check their info against another source before trusting it. AI slop posting is essentially another red flag to use. I'm pretty sure Columbia Public Health used AI to make this summary. Their posts have the emojis, the M dashes, the it's not X, it's Y. Also, they have the endings that are like weird, inspirational endings, which make no sense when you're talking about supposedly solid science. None of this is in their post before 2025. The more red flags you see, the more likely it is it's AI slop. It's like compound interest. The article itself is bad. It is classic clean beauty pseudoscience, really weak findings. Finding something in urine doesn't mean there's enough to cause harm. More in urine means more is leaving the body, and molecules are ridiculously tiny. We probably have a bit of everything we've ever touched inside our bodies. We all have about 50 micrograms of uranium, and that is not a problem. But on top of this standard clean beauty BS, it's not actually summarized properly, like, how do you check a label in a small way? Avoiding oxybenzone or parabens equals significantly lower chemical exposure. Avoiding anything like vitamins and oxygen is also going to give lower chemical exposure because everything is a chemical. Chemical doesn't mean bad. If you look at the actual article, it seems to come from start small by reading labels, which is not the same as this. And it says these chemicals, these is a very important word there. And it also says the parabens finding isn't statistically significant, so it's not an actual finding. Slop on slop. There's also the Cosmetic Chemist podcast. They talk about a study for 8 minutes and they keep speculating about things that are clear in the paper. For example, they say the study must have used a 1-ingredient control and it's clear, even in the abstract, that is not the case. One of the study authors contacted them, so they talk about it again in the next episode. But there they keep saying, we didn't have all the data, the information we were lacking was provided by email. Full disclosure, they talked about this because of a listener question that mentions sponsored posts from me and Abby Young. We talked about the study and the products it led to. That's why I listened to this episode. Yes, you need to consider financial conflicts of interest when critically assessing science. But dismissing all research that has a financial conflict of interest is not critically assessing science. If you did that, you would have to stop taking pretty much all medications because most of that research is industry sponsored. There are tons of other factors to consider when critically assessing a study. There are so many studies that are unsponsored and hot garbage. It's easy to just say nothing works because you would be right like 90% of the time with close to zero effort. A lot of so-called skeptics do this. This cosmetic chemist says there's no noticeable differences between products 20 years ago and now, which is an absolutely wild claim if you use like 5 products a day. My hair was not possible 15 years ago. If you use products, it is that 10% that works that's interesting, and if you're a scientist who cares about finding that 10%, you have to start by actually reading the paper. I did some polls and the vast majority of you guessed the control shampoo just from the abstract. These are cosmetic scientists who talk about studies a lot on their podcasts. They should not be worse than 80% of my audience at reading an abstract. A lot of this is really blowing my mind. Like, I know social media has not been great for society, but before AI chatbots happened, I just do not think scientists would have been talking about a study confidently for 15 minutes without reading even the abstract. Like, I cannot conceive of that ever happening before. This is like an order of magnitude worse BS than we had to wade through previously. It's like, there used to be crocodiles in the information landscape, but now someone has added a whole bunch of landmines. And also, some of the tour guides are also made of landmines. Sorry, that wasn't a food analogy. I actually ate breakfast this morning. Hopefully it's clear why AI chatbots shouldn't be used for science content. They're inaccurate, they're hard to fact check, they're bad even as a starting point, and here's the thing, it's kind of cringe. But what about everything else? If you're not an expert, is there anything wrong with using an AI chatbot to write and make decisions? Even without looking at environmental impacts and ethics, I think using them too much is still a bad idea. It is incredibly likely that heavy users are losing critical thinking skills, and this is a massive problem because critical thinking is the best way for us to make informed decisions to stop us from being manipulated. A lot of educators are concerned about AI overuse. A massive part of education is learning how to think critically, and it's clear that AI chatbots circumvent a lot of that learning part. A lot of us have seen huge changes over the last few years. My students have gotten really bad at constructing 4-line answers even when I give them a scaffold to follow. Their calculations are still mostly fine. Students used to talk to each other to work out prac questions, now they just go straight to chat. Humans have evolved for efficiency, and a lot of this isn't necessarily good for us in the modern world. We've evolved to love sugar and fat. We naturally want to bum around and conserve energy, and our brains have evolved to love mental shortcuts. This problem is worse with late-stage capitalism. Yes, I said the thing. A lot of us don't have the time or energy to make healthier choices. Now, most people know they should be eating healthy and exercising. But the healthy brain problem is kind of flying under the radar, even though it is probably the one that is easiest for us to control. A lot of people are using AI chatbots to essentially avoid going to the brain gym. Again, this is unsurprising given all the research we have on how our brains work. There are also more studies coming out on cognitive offloading, making AI chatbots think for us, and how this is not a good thing. People trust AI advice over other information, over experts, over their own reasoning, even when the AI is wrong, and even when the AI is getting them to make decisions that are bad for them. Even if you feel like AI is making you smarter, this might not actually be the case. It could be an illusion.
Illusions, Dad. You don't have time for my illusion.
Again, this is something we already know from educational research. There is a gap between how smart we are and how smart we think we are. One example is the so-called Dunning-Kruger effect. Consuming content that looks fluent, it's smooth and easy, makes us think we can do it too. This is the whole reason why it's probably a good idea to stick a normal person in every Olympic sport for comparison. And unexpected things can make a difference to how our brains work, like handwriting notes helps us learn better than typing them. Now, critical thinking gets easier if you practice, but on the flip side, the less we practice, the more psychologically uncomfortable it is to think deeply. Sort of like how I cannot do more than 11 baby push-ups anymore before I run out of steam. That is something I'm working on. And easier thinking tasks start to feel more and more uncomfortable. It's been pretty disturbing seeing people becoming super dependent on AI for things that really doesn't need it, like picking food from a menu, deciding to visit a really famous tourist attraction, writing Google reviews, finding lucky clovers. I saw the best minds of my generation destroyed by madness, starving, hysterical, that is what I call him now. And I think this learned helplessness is being encouraged by AI companies. They are shoving AI into everything. They keep saying AI is here to stay. Super smart AI is just around the corner. We may as well surrender our brains and hard-earned skills and become permanent customers. All this super accessible brain junk food everywhere, this makes it really easy to fall into bad habits and lose our critical thinking skills without even noticing. And this means we become really easy to manipulate. This could be financial. We know tech companies make a ton of money from ads. It would be really easy to just start putting product recommendations into LLM outputs. And if you're a heavy user, you might not be able to work out if this is really something you should be buying without asking chat. Tech companies have also been getting more obviously political. Back in the day, social media actually tried to hide it, but we've seen LLM systems do this much more openly. And there's also just carelessness, move fast and break things. We've seen LLMs be carelessly deployed and causing a lot of harm. Now the good news. For healthier habits, the biggest factors are usually environmental. This is where that whole thing about how Europeans are healthier comes from. They don't have less chemicals in their food, it's actually really similar to the US. It is their physical infrastructure and work culture. It supports healthy eating and being active. All of that is just easier. Now individually, we can't build bike lanes or make vegetables cheaper. But for each of us, it's much easier to control our thinking environment. It is probably possible to use AI in a way that's overall beneficial, but you do need to be very mindful and reflect on what's really happening with your thinking processes. You need to be asking things like, do I know how this tool actually works? What are the limits? Which skills am I outsourcing? Am I actually saving time with the AI tool, or am I losing time somewhere else? Am I saving time but then I'm losing quality or satisfaction or skills? Am I making someone else do more work? And is that all a sensible trade-off? How do I feel when I don't use a particular AI tool for a few days? Or if I do something the old school way, and by old school I mean like 3 years ago. Try to notice when you automatically reach for AI, and if going straight to AI has become a habit that isn't benefiting you, maybe set time limits on your phone, make the shortcut harder to get to. Turn off the automatic AI tools that tech companies have jammed everywhere. This also works for other digital habits, like if you spend too much time on TikTok or YouTube.
Or candy.
Reflect on whether it's having a net positive impact on your life. Curating a healthier digital environment is so much easier than just trying to use willpower. If you think my videos might have an overall positive impact on your life, like and subscribe to curate your feed. More videos are popping up around me. Thanks to Jordan Harrod for giving feedback on my script. Links to some of her videos and where you can find her are in the description.